It's an interesting point because you could go out and say Patrick Mahomes told Andy Reid, "Hey, we got to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the draft." But on the flip side, you could say, "Okay, the Chiefs know they're Super Bowl contenders, so why get a veteran running back who is very talented if you already have your staple back?"
What up, Guff? We are back. Joey Marino, James Reiner, Zach Maziarz. This is Grown Up Fantasy Football. And today, we are entering the arena to do a little fantasy showdown. Psh, psh.
Dun, dun, dun.
So,
Back
what
by
is...
popular demand.
Sorry?
Just go. I said back by popular demand.
Yes,
Yes.
by popular demand. Everybody's watching this video we did on Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. So we're doing the same thing. We're basically taking two players and making them go head-to-head and who we want rest of season. So, who are the two players in the Fantasy Showdown? They are running backs for the Kansas City Chiefs. One Le'Veon Bell and one Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, Zach, why don't you give us the facts before we get into the arguments, and then
All
we
right.
give you the verdict.
Le'Veon, could you please give me the belt? Ding ding. Let's go. All right. Here are the facts. For those of you who live under a rock, the Jets released Le'Veon Bell, okay? Chiefs picked him up. They were the front runners. They got him. What do we expect now? What are we seeing? I'm not even going to talk about contract stuff. We're not getting into that. Okay. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted to be what we thought was the bell cow. Damian Williams opted out for the season, so it was going to be originally a Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Damian Williams backfield. Went over to just a Clyde Edwards-Helaire backfield. Now it's a Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire backfield, okay? So let's get into some stats that they're averaging. All right, so right now the Chiefs are averaging 28.6 run plays per game, which is 10th in the league. That's pretty good, all right? So that's a lot of run plays per game. So it seems like a lot of opportunity there, huh? CEH right now is averaging 5 targets a game, which is number 4 in the league. And on top of that, Bell is actually a better receiving back than CEH, so take that with what you will, okay? We also have CEH averaging, or he actually has 23 red zone touches on the season, which is number 9 in the league. He has 7 goal line carries, which is number 4, but only 2 of those have converted into rushing touchdowns on the season. So he's basically gotten stuffed on five goal line attempts. He's also run 139 routes on the season so far, which is number 7 in the league. In Le'Veon Bell's first game with the Chiefs, his very first run with the Chiefs, he had a 17-yard carry. His longest carry with the Jets was for 19 yards. Okay? So Bell looks like the Jets were what stifled him, okay? It looks like, yes, this isn't the Le'Veon Bell who played for the Steelers, who system-wise was the perfect fit for the Steelers, but this is still a very talented Le'Veon Bell who probably could have a good year, who is a veteran running back coming into this high-volume, prolific offense. We talked about the routes. He is a phenomenal route runner. We talked about the routes right now CEH is running. We talked about the running opportunity. We talked about goal line opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity in this offense. What are y'all's arguments? What do y'all think? Do y'all think Le'Veon Bell is a great back still? Do you think he's not so great? Do you think Clyde Edwards-Helaire has just had a slow start and that he's going to pick it up? What are y'all's thoughts?
Oh, to start off, I think Bell is the more talented back. They brought him in for a reason, and they're going to use him. There's just stuff Le'Veon Bell can do that CEH cannot physically do, and that's why they brought him in. And I think the usage is going to be 60-40 and in Bell's favor. And, you know, we were looking at CEH's stats, and let's say we're doing 60 60% of that, 60% of those fantasy points are going to Le'Veon Bell, 40% are going to CEH. I think Le'Veon Bell does more with those opportunities than CEH would do. So I'm leaning Bell rest of the season for me.
Okay.
Do you think though that like so you're talking about the opportunities? Do you think if you are leaning Bell, do you think that Bell could, with his different type of skills, open up the opportunities that CEH does get and have CEH actually have more fantasy points that way?
It's possible. I wouldn't lean towards it. I wouldn't place my bets on it.
All right, Joey, give us your thoughts. Give us your arguments.
Yeah, so we've seen Le'Veon Bell be just an incredible talent. And I think, Zach, like you said, it's not really going to be the Steelers' Le'Veon Bell that we saw back in like 2017, 2016. It's going to be a little more tame, but it's not going to be anything that you had with the Jets, obviously. He went 6 for 39 in his first game, and they've got the Jets next. I think Le'Veon Bell is just going to they're going to dial up some plays specifically for Bell to just rub it in to Adam Gase and the rest of the Jets. However, the Chiefs brought in Le'Veon Bell on a $1 million contract. That is chump change for what you can get out of Le'Veon Bell. They brought him in for a reason. Yes, I think he definitely improves the team, of course. But they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 32nd overall, first-round draft pick. He's making more money from the Chiefs. They're more heavily invested. Yes, he suffered from getting into the end zone from week 1 up until literally last week against Denver. But once they signed Le'Veon Bell and once everything came out, CEH had the 161-yard rushing game. Yes, he had 8 targets in that game too. However, he had 161 yards rushing, and then he had another 100-yard game and a touchdown against Denver while Le'Veon Bell's in there. To start, when we started talking about Le'Veon Bell and going to the Chiefs, I was on board with the 60-40 split going to Bell. I'm not so sure anymore. I think, it's a cheap contract Le'Veon Bell's on. He's only there on a 1-year contract, too. I don't necessarily see the Chiefs re-signing him. I think they're going to want to see more of what they can get out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they're still going to utilize Le'Veon Bell, but I think I'd side with CEH for the rest of the season.
It's an interesting point because you could go out and say Patrick Mahomes told Andy Reid, hey, we got to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the draft. But on the flip side, you could say, okay, the Chiefs know they're Super Bowl contenders. So why get a veteran running back who is very talented if you already have your staple back? Like, it's kind of like they like both of them, which is completely fine. I think the argument that we're saying is, I feel like, Joey, so what you're talking about is that $1 million deal, that 1-year deal. Mm-hmm. It seems like, okay, they know they can be Super Bowl contenders, bring in Bell. At first glance, you think maybe Bell's going to be getting more work. Maybe he's going to be the mentor to CEH. Maybe they're going to say Super Bowl run right here with Le'Veon Bell. He's gone after this year. We have Patrick Mahomes for 9 more years or something like that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we'll try and keep him here as long as we can too, and then just form some dynasty where we could just go to the Super Bowl as often as we want to. But I think looking at it in a different perspective, we might be looking at this argument a little bit wrong. I think, James, what you were talking about with the snap share, I think it could be reversed as well. I could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting 60%, Le'Veon Bell getting 40%, but I could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting more of the running opportunity with Le'Veon Bell getting the passing work and maybe even some of the goal line work. So at that point, it becomes an argument of what do we see as more what do we see as a bigger asset in this offense? Do we see, for fantasy points, do we see the rushing opportunity being a bigger contender for us and our fantasy teams? Or do we see getting the targets, getting the receiving work as a bigger contender? I think that's what it comes down to. And honestly, with the way that they pass the ball, and if Le'Veon Bell were to get some of those goal line carries and actually convert on them, I could see Le'Veon Bell being the better fantasy back the rest of the year.
5 catches is more valuable than 15 carries, in my opinion. I mean, he could get 5 catches for 80 yards. Half point, if you're doing full point PPR, that's a 14-point game.
And this is the Chiefs. This isn't the Jets where 5 passes means 5 yards. 5 catches means 5 yards because they were a dump off that you got tackled behind the line on. These are established and well written up routes for the running back, maybe even from the slot where he will be getting the ball. And so, yeah, I agree with you, James. I think that give me a Patrick Mahomes passing as opposed to a Patrick Mahomes just handing off the ball to you, because I think those targets will be there.
So to counter this 1 year, so you said they didn't use much to bring him in. 1 year, $1 million. I mean, they could just be and CEH is the back of the future. They could just be using him this year. Bell cow, run him into the ground. They have CEH to go.
But at the same time, there's also like I wish they played fantasy football because they probably would do that. But at the same time, like they could just be saying, hey, for only $1 million, which is chump's change to us, we could get a really good receiving back that'll just shore up a very small part of our offense, but make sure that we're going to win the Super Bowl this year.
That's kind of
like
what I'm
it could be
thinking.
that small, unfortunately, for fantasy owners. It could be something that small. Like it doesn't have to be, oh, okay, Le'Veon Bell's here. We have him for 1 year. Let's like use him completely. It could just be, hey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire on these certain passing downs misses a block on these. Let's bring in Le'Veon Bell and just have him, give a better protection to Patrick Mahomes and then run a couple of routes here and there, and we're good. So I hope it's not that, but
Yeah, I mean, you said CEH is averaging 5 targets a game, too, and he had 4 in these last 2 games. So I think that Lev Bell may take more of a share in the passing work, but I still think that CEH gets enough passing work and he gets all the rushing work. I think best case scenario, this ends up being like a Cleveland Junior, where Nick Chubb equals Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell becomes a Kareem Hunt. That's a best case scenario. On the on the upcoming schedule, favorable matchups for them, they've got the Jets, Carolina, Vegas, Miami, and Atlanta coming up. So, lots of opportunity. I'm just so
choked up about this.
I really am. It's really getting to me.
It's an emotional topic, man. Let it out.
It is. But does anybody have a final word before we give you the verdict?
Who's the bigger asshole of the two? That's got to be a factor.
What are their credit scores? The only last thing I would like to say is how funny would it be if the Jets beat the Chiefs?
And Bell
That
has
would be
a horrible
funny.
game.
Bell has a terrible game, and Adam Gase out-coaches Andy Reid, hence making the Jets better in a weird way than the Chiefs.
Adam
At least for
Gase
a
suits
game.
up and plays quarterback for the Jets and beats the Chiefs. That's what I want to see.
I think I'd love to see that. I think all the Chiefs players would love to see that too. But let's give you the verdict of who we'd like to have rest of season. I personally am going to go Clyde Edwards-Helaire. James, what do you think?
Le'Veon Bell.
Joey, I think you actually said it best with the Cleveland Browns. I think another comparable comp would be the Saints with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara a couple of years ago. I think when you have an offense like this, like the Chiefs, where they are able to design these types of plays like the Saints did with Kamara and Ingram, you can have a very successful receiving back. I'm going to say Le'Veon Bell.
Okay. I mean, I would like Le'Veon Bell too. I think another thing, it also depends on your team and your roster. If you can...
And scoring formats. I'd probably say Clyde Edwards-Helaire and standard scoring, but half PPR, full PPR, I'd say Le'Veon Bell.
I don't know who's playing standard anymore, really, but...
There are people.
There are some.
They're out there.
Full kicker
That's true.
leagues.
That's true. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. You heard it here first in our fantasy showdown of the season between Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Zach and James are both going with Le'Veon Bell, and I am being another lone wolf and taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But if you give a comment below, give us your comments, please. Give them of who you would rather have rest of season, Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell. Be sure to like and subscribe. Go grow up and get guff.